Good morning, everyone. How are you today? I'm so glad you decided to join us here at Talking Business. My name is Stephanie Van Bark, and I am a small business owner. As I mentioned, each of our shows is about small business owners who are now in pivot mode and giving us advice, those of us in the entrepreneurial space and those who aspire to be in the entrepreneurial space, how to really think through some innovative ways to stay alive and sustain during situations like a pandemic. So today I'm excited again to speak to Garrie Harris of Alpha One Staffing Search Firm. She is going to be a wealth of information on both the employment side and the entrepreneurship side. So I'm excited to talk to her. And in the interest of transparency, I see you notice I have on pink. She will have on green. And so I just like to let everybody know I'm talking to my sorority sister today. So without further ado, let's talk to Garrie Harris. Good morning.
Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us this morning.
Absolutely. And I have to say the disclaimer is that we didn't plan this pink and green.
I think it was natural.
Just natural, right?
We're naturally drawn to these colors.
Absolutely.
I was hoping she was going to wear something similar, though. So thank you for agreeing to join us. We'd like to start by asking you, who are you and what do you do?
All right. Thank you so very much. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your listening audience. I feel it's a privilege anytime that I can speak to people with the same mindset, that being small business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs. So thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to be on your show. Garrie Harris. Garrie Harris is originally from a small town in North Florida, Alachua County, High Springs. That's where I was born. My mother and father moved to Fort Myers, Florida when I was about 5 years old. And my father owned a construction company and my mother was a teacher in the local school system. So in school, I had the opportunity of my mother being my teacher and my uncle being the principal. And you think that's a good space for a child to be in. It was no, all the eyes were all me.
No, I
grew up in a very conservative, middle class Black neighborhood in Fort Myers. Deion Sanders, everybody knows Deion Sanders. Was in our neighborhood, and we walked to school and went through integration and all those things. My mother and father were very big on education. My mother being, in the educational field as a teacher, always instilled that we were going to college no matter what. My sister, who is older than me, decided that she wanted to go to Bethune-Cookman University, and I had plans to do something else. And back in those days, when your mama told you need to follow your sister,
you go.
Yeah, that's what you did. So I went to Bethune-Cookman University, and I'm so thankful that my mother insisted that I follow my sister into to Bethune-Cookman. Majored in political science with aspirations of being an attorney. Met my now ex-husband, and he was from Miami. So after college, we got married and settled into Miami. I got into the banking industry, starting off as they used to have training programs where you would matriculate through the banking process and work in every division. And it was called a management trainee. So I was a management trainee for, back then it was, I think, Dade Federal Savings and Loan, which turned into Washington Mutual, and was Chase. But I was in their corporate office on Flagler, and they brought me in one day and said, "We want you to go out into Liberty City and work in Liberty City." And I said, not being from Miami, absolutely not. So here's my resignation. So they told me to go home and think about it over the weekend, and they'll accept it, but they wanted me to give it some thought. So I rode by the branch, and I absolutely fell in love with the area, and I agreed to go into Liberty City, and it was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made. I got to incorporate myself into Black Miami. And I realized from being in that branch that there were a lot of African Americans with significant money, and resources. But also, that corridor of 62nd Street, 7th Avenue, 62nd, 52nd, it was filled with thriving businesses, Black-owned businesses. You had your tailors and your barbershops and your restaurants and your bookstores. I don't know if you remember Afro Books and things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All of those things. And at that time, the Miami-Dade Chamber was on 7th Avenue, and it was very strong. And I got an opportunity to meet Dorothy Baker, who was president at that time of the Miami-Dade Chamber.
Okay.
Her daughter is Asara's, and she was Asara, but she kind of took me under her wings and introduced me to Black Miami. And how you do business in Miami-Dade County and so forth. So even though I was still in banking, my head somewhere, I think, was being that entrepreneurial. I went on from there and became branch manager and branch vice president of the bank, and was the first female branch vice president of that particular bank. I moved on to be a regional director and had about 17 or 18 offices in banking. But I grew tired of that and wanted to do something else, but I wanted to stay in financial services. So I became a stockbroker, Series 7 and 63, went to work for a penny stock firm who specialized in initial public offerings, IPOs. Did that for a couple of years, and just that was not my calling. Put my resume back out there and was contacted by a temporary help firm. And I really didn't know, temporary help personnel, that was foreign to me. And the recruiter, had a recruiter, and she said, we're attracted to your resume because of your management background and banking, so forth. Take a look at it. And I did. I studied the industry and said, this is going to be great for me. So I was made an offer, and they gave me a branch on Brickell Avenue, fully staffed office. And I learned a lot about the temporary help field and contract labor. But I only knew the process from the front end of the business, front end, the recruitment, how to source the business, how to do markups, those type things. Couple of years later, I was very impressed by a news article that I saw on a female staffing firm owned in Miami-Dade County. And I said, one of these days I'm going to work for her. I didn't know how, but our path crossed, and she asked me to come work for her, and I did. And when I went to work for her, I sat in her office. That's how much space she had limited. Or she didn't have a desk for me, and she didn't have an office for me. I said, well,
now, why did you want to work with her again?
I got myself into. It was great. It was great, because what I learned from her by those months and months and months of sitting there with her, I learned a lot about the back end of that I didn't know about. And that back end is funding the business, the workers' comp, the liability, the injuries, and all of those things that go along, and the headaches that go along with the staffing industry and being an owner of a staffing company, which there are very, very few owners, Black owners of staffing companies at that time. So, I got very good at contract solicitation, and I had my own niche as to how I would win solicitations. grew her business, took her. When I got there, she had employees in a box, and they were filing them in a box, and she had to cut the clients in a file. And I was like, no.
Yeah, we got to do better than
We
that.
got to do better than this. So we totally automated the business, and still working very diligently in the same community that I had successes with when I was in banking. Moved on and decided, through mutual agreement, that it was time for me to leave and do my own thing. Well, I don't know if it was so mutual, but I decided to do my own thing. But I needed some money. One of my very, very good friends that we grew up with in Fort Myers, Florida, she came to me and said, well, you have the knowledge and I have the friends with money. So let's form a partnership, in which we did, and we formed a partnership. We established Alpha One Staffing, and we started a business with myself and two young ladies that I grew up in Fort Myers with, a doctor out of Baltimore, and my next door neighbor, which is still my next door neighbor, and we get along very well. We haven't fallen out.
Is the partnership still alive? That was another conversation.
The partnership is still very much alive. We don't have all of the partners. Things don't always work out, but we still have 4 of the original
good
partners. Yeah. So we are okay. So then the business was established in 2007, and 2007 was probably the worst year to start any type of business, because that was economic downtime, very, very similar to what we're going through now.
I was going to ask you that. I'm glad you tapped on that.
Yes. So we're starting a staffing and employment industry when no one is a company, when absolutely no one is being hired. So we got an office and got all the credentials and did everything we needed to do to establish a great company, and dead. Sometime I would call my phone number just to make sure that it was still working, because
were you
calling in? No calls.
Were you based here, or were you based in other areas based on your partnerships as well?
I actually was based in when we first. We actually opened up 2 offices when we started. I opened up an office in Miramar because that was close for me at home, and I had been traveling so much in my prior career. I said, if I ever open up my own office, but it's going to be close to home. But I also opened an office in Miami, and at that time, New Birth had a center, and they rented out small office spaces. So I was able to, for $200 a month, which was very reasonable. Thank you, New Birth Baptist Church, for allowing us that space. So we rented out that space in Miami. So there was 2 offices at that time. The resources were quickly used up by the investment of the partners, and we were dying. Really, we were dying. However, through a relationship with the chamber still and Bill Diggs, he introduced me to Rick Beasley, Career Source, South Florida. And Career Source South Florida had an opportunity for us to come in and staff one of their Career Source centers in the interim of another participant coming in with the funding. Very complicated story. But anyway, what the bottom line is that he became my very first client of significance. And I went from maybe 5 employees to 70 employees within a week. So that was kind of our, our saving grace, and I thank him every time that I see him, very much coming in.
He's like, stop thanking me.
Yes. So, with that, and I'm gonna make this kind of quick. With that, we qualified because now we had a company that we had done business with. We had references, and we could go in and go for some of the larger solicitations. Of course, all that time when we weren't hiring anyone, I was making sure that we had all our certifications done. We
Mhm.
were registered with the
Mhm.
municipalities to do business. We certified with the Beatrice Lassance. So
Mhm.
we got
Exactly.
that minority certifications through her organization, and there was a large solicitation that was coming out for staffing with Miami-Dade County. It was a 5-year contract, and typically it was around 50 million that they would spend in those 5 years. So we qualified. We passed our visits because they would come and visit the office to make sure you had an office, and all of our documents were intact, and our references were intact.
Mhm.
So we were awarded. We weren't first. Those contracts are usually first, second, and third. First is usually
Okay.
first. So we were probably third in our pricing. The only reason we were third is because our pricing was a little higher than
Okay.
number one. Through working that project and other companies falling out and our due diligence, I had a great team of internal staff. I mean, they worked really hard. So, we had a great reputation with the county, and we became number one.
Oh,
As other
cool.
companies dropped out and they started using Alpha One as their primary source of contract staffing. So at our highest, we had about 700 or 800 employees with
Wow.
Miami-Dade County. And we were probably, at that time, we were billing yearly between 13 and 15 million with
Wow.
Miami-Dade County. Yeah,
And that was a 5-year turnaround.
that
You
was
went from 2007, 2008, where the
right,
bubble dropped,
right,
to 5 years, this huge
right.
contract.
Yes, absolutely. So
Very cool. Very cool.
thank you. And again,
And hope.
that we didn't do it by ourselves. We had a lot of help, and we had a lot of help from, I tell you, county directors as well. County directors saw an African American female firm that was doing well, and they wanted to make sure that they supported that. Well, okay, here we go. The contract ends, and we are a shoe in to be reawarded this contract.
Mhm.
We had done a fantastic job with the county. The county had no problems with Alpha One staffing. We had never missed a payroll. We were doing payroll, again for 600 or 700 employees. And, of course, there are small issues, but there are never any time when a person wouldn't be paid. We had a great benefit plan for the employees, and it became we got around to the bid and solicitation, and a company came in, little known company out of nowhere, and underbidded us by significant numbers. I still don't know how they priced it, but anyway, we fought the awarding, and
Mhm.
went through the bid protest process. And
Mhm.
on the day of the vote, we had gone to every commissioner and tried to assure ourselves that to fight our case. And that was done with myself and Bill Diggs and Eric Knowles from the
Mhm.
Miami-Dade Chamber. Was significant because we had always been a part of the chambers, and they wanted to work with us to ensure we do that. On the date of the vote, Commissioner Jordan's husband was very, very sick. And 30 minutes before the actual vote, she had to leave the floor and could not put in her vote. And we lost it. We lost it by one vote.
Oh.
We lost by one vote. So we were devastated. We were
Yeah.
devastated.
Because was that your only client at the
That
time?
was not my only client, but that
But
was
that was
80% of my revenue.
the lion's share.
And I had 4 offices at that time. I had opened an office in Fort Myers,
Mhm.
one in Orlando, and 2 in the South Florida area. So I had to close those offices, Fort Myers and in Orlando, and
Mhm.
work with the Miramar office and the Miami office. Lay off a significant amount of my team.
Mhm.
It was very devastating for us, but you have to do what you have to do.
Well, okay, so you've given me a lot that I want to just chime in.
Well,
So you gave me such a no, I got to get it all in.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
one of the things you talked about that I think was very key, and if you could expand a little bit on, just in listening to your story, there was a lot of education you had to get, but hands-on education you had to get in order to really go out on your own and feel somewhat confident that you had all the knowledge you needed. That doesn't seem to necessarily be the school of thought today. What is your feeling about the education you received, as you mentioned, of working with someone where you got to learn the back of the house information? Working with someone that you sat right next to them and got to hear about the inner workings. Is there a way to educate entrepreneurship, or you just kind of got to get your own training by being in the space?
Feet in the fire. A lot of things are feet in the fire, but I don't necessarily think that you have to work. That's not necessarily the smartest way to approach entrepreneurship. Because I remember Beatrice once said to me that entrepreneurs are either very smart or we're very stupid.
Or both. Depends on the day.
Who would take themselves through this punishment?
Depends on the day. It depends on the day.
I haven't figured it out yet. But I feel as if you need to have a mentor. You need to at least take some time if you're considering going into any type of business field. Find yourself a mentor in that particular arena and have some conversations with them, sit down with them, spend some time with them if they're willing. And I'm always willing. I have actually helped a lot of entrepreneurs in the staffing space, as well as others, to say these are the ugly sides of what's going to happen. Do you have the stomach for this? Because this is not for the weak. This is not for the weak. It absolutely is not for the weak. And if you are comfortable with the 9 to 5, then this is not for you, because it never ends. And I always liken it to, I told a person once that I have a 50-pound baby on my back. I cannot put to bed. I cannot, skip enough food. It just stays on my back. When I'm at bed, when I'm asleep, is there. When I wake up, is there. And that's typically what I feel like business owners are. We have that on our shoulders constantly. It never goes away.
And the emotional play on it as well. I mean, I'm listening to you, and I'm thankful you're willing to share this ebb and flow you've gone through, this highest of high, and to no fault of your own, or the circumstances of the day, to the lowest of low. How do you wake up in the morning and go, I'm still, it's got to play on your self-esteem. I'll be honest, it plays on mine all the time.
Oh yeah,
so,
absolutely.
How do you work through that emotion?
Not only does it play on your self-esteem, but it also plays in your effectiveness to feel that you are a successful entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Because you, like you said, you've been in the high places, but you have to figure out how I'm going to survive now. Okay. What is your plan? And for us, after we lost Miami-Dade County, now we're still on a county contract. We still, we were awarded some of the positions, so we still work with Miami-Dade County, but we had to figure out what we needed to do next. And our next step was, we decided, we looked around at the industries and what is a kind of a foolproof, economy-proof industry that we pivot into.
Okay.
And we looked at disaster management. Disasters everywhere, happening every day. So we marketed ourselves in a way of, I have a great marketing team of one, my daughter Lauren,
who is also a Sarah.
Yes.
It's all in the family.
I have another contract project person who is Nakia, and she does all of my my contracts for us and new solicitations. She's very good at that in recruiting. And we've gone down to one person in payroll. So we've kind of scaled ourselves down, and we have a project manager who does the brief, which is Joyce. And I'm going to bring those people up because they do a fantastic job, along with my very supportive partners. But we were called in to do debris monitoring for Broward County School Board, and we hired a couple of hundred people, and got to be a really good partnership with a company by the name of Whit O'Brien, who does debris and disaster management throughout the United States.
Okay.
Since then, we've been called in on projects in Tennessee and Georgia, Mississippi, the Carolinas, and North Florida. After a hurricane comes in, we go in and we monitor debris. We don't touch debris.
Right.
With handheld computers that monitor the debris.
That is happening.
Yeah, that's right. So, and now we have contracts in about almost 17 counties in the state of Florida, and we have counties as a subcontractor in probably 15 states in the United States. So that was kind of our pivot plan, and it was good. We were back out there moving and shaking and able to mobilize ourselves in the areas pretty quickly. But what happened last year, one of those downturns again, there were no storms in the United States at all.
So you had no use for that.
None.
Oh, that's interesting. That's it. So I started this business and there's no problem.
Right. There was one hurricane in the Bahamas, but this particular industry for us, we feel is going to be significant. There are very few of us in disaster management, and there's a huge opportunity to make a lot of money in the industry because disasters are happening everywhere, every day. And we've aligned ourselves with not only our major partner, which is Whit O'Brien, but we've also now become prime contractors in the area. And we got our first contract with Miami-Dade County School Board as the prime vendor for disaster management and debris monitoring in Miami-Dade County. So not that we're looking forward to any storms, and we don't want anybody to get hurt, but in case that they do, you have to have companies that are ready for that type of deployment.
Well, it's very interesting because it sounds like you have had to be very nimble and open to new ideas and concepts, because I read that you had started the disaster relief program, but and my initial thought was, what has one got to do with staffing? But at the end of the day, quite frankly, you could staff people in doing that particular process.
Absolutely.
So it was a good, I guess it was a good marriage. So how are you able to think through some of those innovative ways of really staying in the game and tapping into some industries you may not have thought of before?
Yeah, some of the contract managers along the way have given me some very good advice, because I do business with the federal government as well, Navy Seaport. They and local in certification. What they say is, when you're filling out all those certifications and you're becoming certified with municipalities or whomever companies, fill out or check as many boxes as you possibly can, because you never know when an opportunity is going to come in an area where you have no experience in, but they're going to call on you and say, hey, Alpha One, we have this contract is coming out. Do you think this may be something that you have it marked that you can do it? And if you can't do it, then you go and find yourself a partner who can, and you form a strategic alliance and say, okay, you will be, we'll be partnership in this. You have the expertise, but I have the certification and the backing. So let's work together on it.
Right.
So I think with that, because of course, once you put yourself in all those certifications, you get notifications when those bids or solicitations are coming out, or there's something to do with that. So you kind of look and you squint and you say, I could do that, let's research.
I know somebody who can.
Yeah.
I know somebody.
Right. Exactly.
and I can partner with them. Now we have a question from Terrence. Hey, Terrence, he's a good friend of mine, and he's an alpha.
Hi, Terrence.
How do you stay on mission? Or do you continue to adjust your mission according to the concerns that you feel your agency can handle, which you were actually sort of speaking to a little bit, but just giving yourself permission to do so, I guess.
Yes. Excuse me a second. Hi, Terrence. Absolutely. And I think we kind of layered right into your question with the last conversation.
Exactly.
But you stay on mission because you continue to have your core values of your company. You don't want to take on or assume anything that you will assume a risk or responsibility that you can't handle. But if you feel that within your core values that you can extend yourself to a new process or a new industry, then by all means, do your research, figure out the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And if you feel that it's something that you can make money in, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, making money and having an impact, then go for it.
Well, I did mention she is a business owner, but she's got another hat as well. She works with the Broward Black Chamber. So between staffing your company and the chamber, let's kind of get into the pandemic. This is a different time and a different problem.
Right.
So, by the way, Terrence wants me to let you know, hey, Wildcat.
Hey, Terrence, how you doing?
Just a subtle hint.
I know very well as a also.
Yeah, subtle hint there. But what are you saying to businesses? We've talked about, there's been some projection that small businesses, about 40% of small businesses will not make it through the pandemic. What are you saying to those folks about, is it time to sunset, or how can you stay alive, or what is some advice or counsel around that arena that you're able to share?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, and I don't know if I even have the answers. I think none of the experts have the answers. I think the numbers are probably right. I think it may be significantly higher. If nothing is done, we're definitely going to see a lot of small businesses file bankruptcy and no longer will just be closing their doors forever, which is very, very sad. Going back to the conversation that we just had, if you can now take this opportunity, and thank you for bringing up the Broward Black Chamber, Broward Black Chamber. I'm actually a board member for the Chamber of Commerce, and again, I work with the Miami-Dade Chamber. I think I've been with the Chamber in Miami-Dade County since the 80s, so they're very near and dear to my heart, chambers. And if you're not a part of the chambers and you can afford it, please join the chambers. But just kind of looking around you and looking at the industries that are thriving, and think about possibly reinventing yourself in a new industry, getting certified, taking this time to get certified in a new industry, taking courses that will give you additional knowledge in additional industries. Because we're let's face it, we're sitting home. A lot of us are sitting home and scared to death. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, take this time and possibly look at some other opportunities out there, because you may not be in business in the next 3 to 4 months. So let's try to figure out what else we can do.
But that's a conversation I think I've had before with some other folks, and to look at it on both sides. I'll ask about business initially in a city and a country that's primarily small business. Are we starting to have some conversations now about how we really help small businesses sustain? I mean, I've heard of some small businesses that have had challenges staying open after the first payroll.
Yeah.
So, there needs to be a conversation around how do we really make businesses healthy enough to sustain traumatic situations. This is unprecedented. That's true.
Right, right,
But,
right.
traumatic situations. And then when you look at the staffing side with, what, 36 million unemployed around the country, I think 6 million of that, 7 million of that here. How, as a staffing company, especially when you don't have
Are you gonna sustain
too.
sustainable? Again, it's going to depend, I think, in our particular case, and we're fortunate. We have an IT side as well. Our IT is it's not healthy, but it's helping us out, to keep some doors open. And to mention we haven't mentioned this, and I'm sure you're going to bring it up. I don't know if we have a lot of time, but the payroll protection, we were
Yes, I do want to.
enough to actually get that loan, and I was able to bring back my core staff. So that has helped us as well. We actually got funded in the first round of it, and my core team is back at work, marketing and sales, and trying to bring in new business. There are companies that are hiring.
Okay.
Career Source South Florida just announced an initiative yesterday that they're going to be doing some major hiring, as it relates to people who have been displaced. So that's going to be a significant program as well. And I think they're going to be going through staffing companies in order to be able to do that hiring. We have a relationship with companies that are still getting grants, like Greater Miami Service Corp, that are going to be doing some hiring. So there is still opportunities to be hired, but there's definitely not enough jobs out there to sustain everyone who has lost income. And that's very unfortunate. But again, we're not going to be able to figure out how we're going to put people back to work until they can go back to work safe in a safe environment. Some things are not going to wait for safe, like disaster. That's not going to wait for safe. We have to put people out, and to go back to work. So that's again. We have teams ready to do that. So that's how we're going to kind of be sustainable. But that's only Alpha One in their industry. I wish I had a better answer to that, but I don't know where this is leading us. I really don't.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to play it by ear. You mentioned the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Program. We talked earlier about, and you mentioned that you were one of what, maybe 3 or 4 people I know who actually did get the loan. Did you apply for any other grants? And
I did.
And how was that PPP process for you in terms of application?
Yeah, the PPP process for me, I thank God I did not experience some of the problems that other small businesses did. I applied through Chase. I've been with Chase since I worked for them, back in the day. So naturally, I had my business account with them, and I went through, fill out my application, and got notice within 3 to 4 days that my loan had been approved. Did not submit any additional documentation, and was funded in probably the next 3 days. So that worked very well for me. I don't think a lot of people had that experience, but that was my experience. Now, as far as other loans are concerned, we did go after the SBA disaster loan as well. We didn't do anything with the state of Florida. That process was a little complicated as far as I'm concerned. But we, the SBA loan, you were supposed to get up to $10,000 that is forgivable, and without any additional response from SBA. One day I looked at my bank account and I had $10,000 from SBA. So that was a blessing as well. And got word the other day that the other part of my loan is being considered for that as well. So
good, very good.
And I want to say that again, it's kind of the due diligence of what you do that maybe leads to where you need to be in this particular area where we're finding ourselves. You need to put in the processes in terms of your accounting, in
Absolutely.
terms of your back office, in terms of your documentations, in terms of
Absolutely.
certifications. And a lot of times we don't have time to do all of that. You and I had this conversation that as business owners, we're the bottle washer, the chief cook, and the pot washer. But we have to find time to do that, because when these things happen, we need to have our documentation in place, and making sure that when they say that they need 6 months worth of reports or whatever, we need to be able to put our hands on that stuff so we can
Right.
we
Absolutely.
can get the funds that we need. And we also need to be able to mobilize ourselves and be ready to do business. Think about how we're going to do business. We may not necessarily have the money to execute it at that particular time, but
Right.
you need to be able to take your business when something like this happens and mobilize very quickly and ramp up
Yeah.
and have that disaster plan ready. Because again, these storms and other things are going to come.
Hmm.
We can't always rely on someone to give us those funding. We need to put some
Right.
work in up front to make sure that our processes are in place, that we can still operate.
And do you think also your relationship with your bank was very key? I too applied for PPP, and there
Mm-hmm.
were some challenges, but
Mm-hmm.
my relationship with my banker, being able to call me up and
Yeah,
walk me through the
yeah,
process,
yeah,
changed the game for me
yeah,
because I'd given up.
yeah.
And do you think that also having that relationship and a
I
team?
think I think by having that, I was assigned a personal banker with Chase, a couple of years ago, and I've been fortunate that I still have the personal banker. And I'm not saying that your bank account has to look good all the time to have a personal banker, but you do need to have a personal relationship at
Mhm.
your bank in order to ensure that you have someone to call on.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, another question that came up is, do you feel, and it brings about, I guess, a diversity question for me, that there's room for an opportunity for more Black owned staffing companies, not to cause you any competition. Uh, and what do you think a Black owned or minority owned staffing business brings to the arena that maybe some other types of staffing companies may not be able to do?
Okay. So, very good question. I think there's enough money out there for all of us. And when I meet someone that wants to go into the staffing industry, it's with open arms. So how
Okay.
can I help you? Let me know. Again, monitoring piece of it. Can we do some collaborations? All of those things are important, because we were at one point as business owner that wide-eyed, ready to go person. So I don't want to dampen anyone's enthusiasm, and well, hey, one day I might need them.
Right.
So
Good job. So let me welcome you in.
but not just for that, but we need to hold each other's hand through the process. Um let's see, the second part of that question you asked me, I'm sorry, I'm having a moment here. The second
How do
part.
you feel?
Oh,
What
how
do
we
you
significant.
yeah.
Okay, and I'll give you a perfect example, and I'll tell you how we've been successful with this whole switching industries and disaster. Um, we were called upon to bring in hundreds of people to work disasters wherever we go,
Okay.
and we mobilize quickly, and we can infiltrate the communities and bring about a lot of people in a very short period of time, because that's what we have to do to hire. They stay on the project 6 to 8 months. They make
Oh,
very,
good.
very good
So
money.
that
Very good money. So I would encourage anyone that when you see us
right. So
pop up that we're hiring for disaster people, apply for those positions, because they make very, very good money. But what we have been able to do is we go into our communities, and our communities are the ones that are typically hiring for these short-term staffing projects, but they're hiring for somebody
mhm.
else. So when our people see that they're being hired by somebody that looks like them, they
Mhm.
call what is it, Lottie, who he used to say, the commissioner Lottie Dottie and everybody, to come over and help us out.
Come on over.
Y'all come on, the whole family, come on. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how we bring our numbers up really quick, and we can hire and mobilize in those areas. So yes, there is an advantage to being sisters or brothers in this industry, because you can count on those large communities that are basically unemployed and don't have a lot of skills, and we can bring them in and hire them, and they can provide for their families. Absolutely. We have people in Miami-Dade County who follow us all across the United States. Our phones are ringing off the hook. When a storm comes out there, we're ready to go. So yeah, it is some value in that. But also the value too is that being certified again as a minority, because these large corporations that have been doing this for a while, there is some language in there that they need to bring in, a piece that has some minority subcontracting in it. And if with this field not being crowded with a lot of minority vendors, you can really make yourself stand out.
Okay. We have Jenna Lauren, who said, yes, especially if you can target a niche. Kanemo Williams, who will be our guest tomorrow, and also a Wildcat.
Wildcats.
Wildcats showing up today.
Right.
Asked a question about staffing in the hospitality industry. Is that an industry you're in currently? And, again, with the pandemic, has that had to shift a little bit, or is there opportunity in that arena?
Yeah. There is. We're kind of general staffing. We I don't like to say it, but we follow money. So we don't make money. We got to follow where the hiring is going. But in the hospitality industry, yes, that industry has been kind of non-existent. But of course, it's coming back with everything else. Part of the dollars that CareerSource has is for hospitality industry and those employees who have been displaced by that industry. So they're going to be putting money into that to bring back that industry and doing some hiring in those areas. So kind of look out for that. You can go to the CareerSource website and see when they start hiring back in those industries. But yes, Alpha One Staffing, hires not only hospitality, but entertainment. We did the Super Bowl, and we did a lot of hospitality in the Super Bowl. We do special projects. We do in the entertainment industry. We do a lot of events that come to South Florida as well, where we staff up a lot. So just kind of making sure that you're ready in all those fields. Yes.
I would imagine operations has changed somewhat at this point. I know for me, I had an office, and to some respect, it was a co-working space. I will go back. I think you and I talked very briefly about, what used to be maybe the staffing office where you did a lot of interviews or that kind of thing. That's obviously changed a little bit, but can that now be the wave of the future in staffing, of sort of using an online platform and less focus on office space?
Yeah. Well, we had basically gotten out of, when we lost a lot of our contract and revenue, we had kind of gotten out of having the people come into our office. And again, with us hiring in multiple states, we went to an online platform probably 4 or 5 years ago. So that works very well for us. We hold interviews like we're doing now, and everything. We're a totally paperless company, so everything, all of the onboarding and everything is done on our online platform. It is definitely the wave of the future. And getting used to this type of conversation is going to be significant in those who are employed and those who are not employed. And if you're not doing it, practice. Get on and make sure your camera is right, your lighting is right. It's just what we did before.
Absolutely.
that your audio is good, that you're sitting up straight, because this is definitely going to be the wave of the future as to how interviews are conducted for all positions.
So that's definitely going to be very key for communities that have challenges sometimes without the technology, but we're definitely going to have to make sure those industries are able and capable at that moment as well.
Right. And we do have the technology at hand, because typically everybody has a cell phone. And
Yes,
these
absolutely.
you can interact in this way on your cell phone. You know, it's
Absolutely.
not the best way to do it. The platform is, you know, a laptop, but if you have to, you can do it on your cell phone.
Okay, great. So this has been a wonderful conversation. Actually, I learned something about the staffing industry. Actually, I learned something about how to really sort of keep your business sustained and moving forward, even in situations where you have the strangest challenges.
Right.
So that has been a wealth of information for me, and I hope for you as well. Before you leave, we would like to know how we can get in touch with you.
Sure. You can visit our website, which is www.alpha1staffing.com. And that's the numeric one. Again, www.alpha1staffing.com. And also, we have an 800 number, and that number is 855-525-7421. 855-525-7421. And we have personnel available to answer your questions. But the best way via the website, go ahead and put your information in. We have an online platform that you can submit your resume. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of positions that you can apply for. There are some employers that are still hiring. So, you know, take a look at the website and see if there's something that matches your skill. And also, if you are looking to hire,
Contact you. Hey, I actually have it so funny. I have a friend that just chimed in, Meg DeLeon. Hey, Meg. She said, thank you. I appreciate the staffing industry because she's going through that process right now. So
awesome.
So great. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
I appreciate
I'll be seeing you real
fun.
And thank you. The information was invaluable for sure.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye. So everyone, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I always love to learn stuff. And staffing is definitely going to be very key over the next, 1 or 2 years after the pandemic. So it's going to be a wonderful thing to see as people try to get back to work, to how that the business will evolve, that industry will evolve. Thank you so much. We'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock with Kanimo Williams of Ooh Ah. Okay, I got to say this right. Ooh Ah Lemonade. Did I say that right? I hope so. At any rate, and he's a Towner, so you know that's going to be very special for me as well. Thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow, and have a great day.